Next customer. Please come this way, I called out as the cash registers grew increasingly crowded. Swiftly, I opened the adjacent register and began guiding customers through their transactions. After a concerted effort, the congestion eased, allowing me to return to restocking shelves. "Mary, you're amazing at ringing up customers so quickly," remarked a fellow part-time employee, breaking the rhythm of my tasks. In this bustling supermarket, a diverse mix of high school students and individuals like myself populated the workforce, making each shift enjoyable. My name is Mary, a 45-year-old part-time housewife who found solace and purpose in this role for the past decade. When my child began elementary school, I sought employment and landed a part-time position at this local market. The environment, filled with fellow housewives and understanding managers, suited my lifestyle perfectly. Over the years, I transitioned into one of the senior part-timers, familiar with both customers and colleagues alike. However, a sudden change disrupted our routine when our beloved manager was transferred to headquarters for what seemed like a promotion. His replacement, a newcomer from the headquarters, lacked the familiarity and competence we had grown accustomed to. Slowly, the atmosphere soared as his managerial style clashed with the store's dynamics. Rumors circulated among part-timers speculating on the president's wife's preferences for young, charismatic managers. It became apparent that our new manager sought her favor, often seen engaging in conversation with her. Despite the dissatisfaction brewing among us, none dared to voice their concerns to the president's wife. Instead, some part-time housewives and student employees quietly began resigning. As the situation unfolded, I found myself contemplating whether it was time to seek alternative part-time employment, unsure of what the future held in this changing environment. I found myself in the crosshairs of the president's wife, her sudden inquiry catching me off guard. "You've been working at the store for quite some time, haven't you? How's your child? Already in college? Which one?" she prodded, surprising me with her directness. "Yes, I've been here since the previous manager," I replied cautiously, not eager to delve into personal matters. Then, with a cutting tone, she remarked, "You seem rather incompetent. I doubt you even attended a decent college, did you?" Her words struck deep, but before I could respond, the register area became inundated with customers. I offered a quick nod to the president's wife and swiftly attended to my duties. In truth, my educational journey had ended with middle school. High school had been a tumultuous time, marked by bullying and eventual dropout during my third year. Since then, I had carved out a life as a part-time worker, eventually meeting my husband in a similar setting and building a life far removed from academic pedigrees. The president's wife, however, seemed to embody a stark contrast. She often boasted about her prestigious university background, yet curiously avoided divulging its name. It struck me as odd, but I brushed it off, lacking any particular interest. Perhaps she harbored preconceived notions about part-time workers like myself, assuming we lacked higher education. I recalled overhearing her discussing such matters with the store manager, leaving me to wonder if she looked down upon us. As murmurs circulated among fellow part-timers about similar interrogations, I found myself bracing for another encounter with the president's wife when, sure enough, she returned to the store the following day. "Excuse me," her voice cut through the air, signaling another potentially tense exchange. My attention snapped up when the president's wife directed her gaze towards me, a smirk playing on her lips as if she found amusement in some private joke. Despite the urge to react, I managed to rein in my irritation, keeping my emotions in check as she began to speak. "So, you're just a middle school graduate, aren't you? I never pegged you for a college goer, but to think you're managing here with that level of education is quite something," she remarked, her words dripping with thinly veiled condescension. I couldn't help but wonder where she had gleaned this information from, until I recalled the previous day's incident when the store manager had been scrutinizing the part-timers' resumes in the office. It seemed that what should have been confidential information had somehow found its way into the president's wife's hands. Annoyance bubbled within me at the thought of her freely sharing such personal details with other employees. I had never sought to fabricate my educational background, but the audacity of someone spreading rumors about my academic history grated on my nerves. While my fellow part-time colleagues seemed unfazed by the revelation, the president's wife took every opportunity to remind me of my supposed educational shortcomings. It became her refrain, peppering our interactions with thinly veiled jabs. "Maybe you wouldn't understand, Being just a middle school graduate, she would quip, using my education as a pretext to assign me menial tasks like cleaning. The repetition of her taunts grated on my nerves, feeling a growing resentment towards my workplace. I began to question why I subjected myself to such treatment, feeling increasingly disheartened by her relentless needling. A few days later, when she returned to the store, her mere presence was enough to stir up irritation within me. As I attempted to sidestep her, she caught my eye and gestured towards the cardboard box storage area, an area typically left untouched as it was designated for supplier use. "People like you should be familiar with garbage," she sneered, her words laced with disdain. "Middle school graduates like yourself are just here to collect a paycheck." Her words stung, delivered in the privacy of the back room, shielded from the scrutiny of customers. It was a deliberate attempt to belittle me, a reminder of my perceived inadequacies in her eyes. I had always managed to endure, especially since most interactions occurred in the bustling sales area. But on that particular day, the weight of my pent-up frustration became too much to bear. "Excuse me, but I believe I earned my paycheck through diligent work, regardless of my educational background," I interjected, my tone laced with simmering anger. The president's wife appeared taken aback, clearly unaccustomed to such pushback. "If you're going to be here, why not contribute something beneficial to the store? We're never quite sure what you're up to," she retorted, her words dripping with disdain. Ignoring the curious glances of passing colleagues, I pressed on. "And what exactly are you contributing by gracing us with your presence? Chatting with the manager, flirting with male employees and high school part-timers, looking down on the rest of us?" I challenged, refusing to back down. Her face flushed crimson with rage as my words hit their mark. "Unlike someone like you, I have a busy schedule. Coming here takes time out of my day," she shot back, attempting to assert her superiority. I couldn't help but scoff at her assertion. "Do you truly believe that? Neither the employees nor the customers share your sentiment. It's intriguing how some with impressive educational backgrounds prove utterly ineffectual in practice," I countered, releasing the resentment I had long harbored towards her condescending attitude. Clearly flustered by my unexpected retort, the president's wife struggled to conjure a suitable response, resorting to tired clichés. "Do you honestly think you can continue working here after speaking to me like that?" she challenged, her voice tinged with disbelief. Without hesitation, I delivered my final verdict. "Then I'll resign," I declared, refusing to tolerate any further belittlement. In response, the president's wife let out a mocking laugh. "Well, that'll save us on labor costs," she sneered, her words dripping with derision. I returned the smile, nodding in agreement. "Yes, that's right. Good for you," I affirmed before making my way towards the locker room. Inside, I found a fellow part-timer who had witnessed the earlier exchange. I poured out the details of what had transpired, recounting the frustrations that had been building up. "Mary, are you really quitting?" she asked, her expression reflecting the sadness of our shared experiences over the years. "It just hasn't been the same since the manager changed. It feels like we're only here out of obligation," I confided, echoing her sentiments. "With so many people leaving, you'd think they'd hire more staff, but they'd rather cut costs." She nodded in understanding. "It's becoming unbearable. I don't blame you for wanting out." Leaving the locker room behind, I headed towards where the manager and the president's wife were engaged in conversation. Without preamble, I made my intentions clear. "That's it, I'm done," I stated firmly, meeting their surprised gazes head-on. The president's wife chuckled, seemingly amused by the news. "So, the junior high school graduate is calling it quits. I wonder where someone like you will find work," she remarked, her tone dripping with condescension. I refused to let her words rattle me. "Even if I have nowhere else lined up, I won't be coming back here. I'll return my uniform next week. Thank you for everything," I declared, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. As I exited the supermarket, a sense of relief washed over me. The following week, when I returned to return my uniform, I found the store abuzz with commotion. The manager was being berated by irate customers near the cash register, suggesting some sort of transaction error. Despite the chaos, I felt a sense of peace knowing that I had made the right decision to leave. With my resignation already settled, I made my way towards the office to return my uniform. As I approached the door, the unmistakable voice of the president's wife reached my ears, giving me pause. Reluctantly, I pushed the door open, finding the former manager inside. Despite his new role at headquarters, my ingrained habit led me to address him as manager out of reflex. It seemed the president's wife had been engaged in conversation with him, but she hastily departed upon my arrival. "What happened at the register?" the former manager queried, his expression troubled. He proceeded to inform me of a spate of recent complaints at the store since my departure. With a cascade of resignations following mine, the store had been left scrambling to cope with the sudden exodus of part-timers and student workers. Though the manager attempted to fill in on the sales floor, his lack of familiarity with basic tasks like stocking shelves and operating the register led to a litany of customer complaints. Today's incident, however, involved a particularly embarrassing misstep. The president's wife, while conversing with a male employee, was mistaken for staff by a customer. Brushing off the inquiry, she exacerbated the situation when the manager inadvertently disclosed her true identity, sparking further discontent among patrons. As the register area swelled with customers, the absence of experienced part-timers compounded the chaos. Both unfamiliar employees and the manager found themselves manning the registers, resulting in numerous errors and lengthy delays. The escalating frustration among customers culminated in the manager facing a barrage of complaints, exacerbating an already tumultuous situation. Turning to me, the former store manager sought insight into the unfolding debacle, hoping for some semblance of understanding in the aftermath of my departure. When asked why I had decided to quit, I didn't hesitate to respond honestly. The former manager seemed genuinely interested in my reasons for leaving, and I felt it was only fair to provide him with the truth. In turn, he confided in me that he had heard rumors regarding the president's wife's educational background. While he lacked specific details, the word on the grapevine was that she had only graduated from high school. This revelation left me pondering the irony of her previous educational condescension. Could it be that the president's wife, with her supposed lack of higher education, was projecting her own insecurities onto others? It certainly made her seem all the more formidable and unpredictable. 2 weeks later, the supermarket I had once called my workplace stood deserted. The usual throng of customers was conspicuously absent, a stark contrast to the bustling scenes of my former shifts. It's no surprise, given all those complaints, I mused to myself as I observed the desolate scene. Lost in thought, I was approached from behind by the former store manager. After exchanging pleasantries, he mentioned a new store opening just one station away. He extended an offer, asking if I would be interested in joining the team. It appeared that an employee he had trained was being promoted to the position of store manager at the new location. Knowing the caliber of this individual, I felt a sense of trust and reassurance. I nodded in agreement and wasted no time in reaching out to my former part-time comrades. Upon confirmation of my role at the new store, I discovered that some of my former colleagues would also be joining me, a comforting realization amidst the uncertainty of change. Under the guidance of an understanding manager, I quickly settled into my new role. The atmosphere was welcoming, and I found it easy to establish rapport with my coworkers, both old and new. The new store introduced innovative offerings, such as local side dishes and bread, which proved to be a hit with customers. As I embraced this fresh start, I couldn't help but feel optimistic about the opportunities that lay ahead. As I settled into my new role at the store, I was greeted by familiar faces from my time at the previous location. The transition to the new store went smoothly, marked by a successful launch and positive feedback from both customers and employees. However, I soon heard troubling reports about the old store. It had become notably quiet, and the manager found themselves facing frequent scoldings during head office meetings. A string of new hires as part-timers quickly came and went, exacerbating the ongoing staff shortage. Finding a new part-time job had brought a sense of relief, and I was content to work happily as I had before. But about a month into my tenure at the new store, the president's wife made a surprising appearance before me. Her unexpected visit seemed to be aimed directly at me, as she wasted no time in addressing the rumors she had heard. "I heard there's a junior high school dropout working at our store again, so I came to check," she stated bluntly. I couldn't help but sigh at her accusatory tone. "What's the issue?" "I haven't done anything wrong," I replied, feeling unfairly targeted. She persisted, laying blame at my feet for the troubles at the old store. But I refused to accept her accusations. "Isn't it more accurate to say that you're the one engaging in power harassment?" I challenged, frustration simmering beneath the surface. Former colleagues from the previous store attempted to intervene. But I waved them off. I couldn't let them shoulder the blame for something they weren't responsible for. As a middle school graduate, I can't possibly be held accountable for all the employees quitting, I asserted, refusing to be intimidated. The president's wife's anger flared at my defiance, but I stood my ground, supported by nods of agreement from fellow part-timers. If you're having trouble understanding, let me spell it out for you. Your disdain for our educational backgrounds and the manager's incompetence have created a toxic environment, I explained, my words ringing with conviction. In the end, no one wants to endure power harassment while working part-time, and it was time for the president's wife to acknowledge the real issues at hand. When I accused the president's wife of power harassment, she immediately raised her voice in denial. "Are you trying to frame me without any evidence?" she retorted, her tone sharp with indignation. Just as she attempted to grab hold of me, the manager intervened, asserting firmly, "Can you please stop doing that to our part-timers?" Despite the risk to his own position, the manager stood his ground. "I am the manager of this store, and it's my duty to protect the employees. I will fulfill my role, whether you're the president's wife or not," he declared, earning applause from the other part-timers. With a resigned sigh, I reached for my smartphone. "I have evidence of power harassment," I stated calmly before playing a video. The footage showed the president's wife berating another part-timer at the previous store, clearly demonstrating a pattern of abusive behavior. As more part-timers stepped forward with their own recordings, it became evident that we had all experienced her mistreatment. "We're going to sue her," I announced, met with resolute nods of agreement from my colleagues and the manager. Furious at the manager's defiance, the president's wife impulsively fired him on the spot. But to her dismay, I revealed that I had recorded her dismissal as well, ensuring the manager's protection. Realizing the depth of her self-inflicted predicament, the president's wife attempted to flee. But before she could escape, I confronted her one final time. "There are more important things than education, aren't there? Sometimes humanity matters more in society," I remarked pointedly, causing her to pause. "How did you know?" she muttered, inadvertently admitting to her own insecurities. With her self-destruction complete, the president's wife retreated at a speed I had never seen before. In the aftermath, we pursued legal action against her, armed with solid evidence and the support of fellow part-timers. As news of her misconduct spread, similar complaints emerged from other stores, leading to a reckoning for her behavior. Forced to confront the consequences, the president demanded she repay her debts by working. It was a satisfying sight to witness her laboring angrily at a nearby drugstore, a fitting end to her reign of mistreatment. With a trustworthy manager at our helm, we continued our work with renewed dedication, free from the shadow of power harassment.
Hello, I'm Pearl, 29 years old, and I've recently welcomed a new addition to the family. However, the birthing process was anything but smooth, thanks to my mother-in-law nearly causing me harm. I may sound a bit crazy, but allow me to share the tale. Let me start by giving you some background on my husband, Adrian. We met in college and instantly clicked, falling in love almost immediately. Our connection was extraordinary, and I knew he was the one. After graduation, we moved in together, and while I had no complaints about Adrian, his mother Becky was a different story. Adrian and his family, originally from Missouri, moved to my state when he was 12. With their charming Southern accents and unique customs, I attributed Becky's mistreatment of me to cultural differences. She disapproved of me taking her son away and resented the fact that the rest of Adrian's family adored me. Without any specific reason, I became the target of her disdain. Despite her constant snide remarks and belittling of my achievements, Adrian stood by my side, putting a stop to her behavior. After 7 years of dating, we decided to tie the knot in a small, intimate ceremony. Although Becky tried to cause trouble, we quickly quashed it by making it clear that she needed to behave or face consequences. Married life only strengthened my bond with Adrian's family. Whenever his relatives visited, they chose to stay with us instead of a hotel, much to Becky's displeasure. She continued her attempts to sabotage me, but the support I received from others remained unwavering. Eventually, Adrian's relatives refused to interact with Becky without our presence, as they discovered she treated them just as poorly as she treated me. After 3 years of marriage, I began experiencing unusual abdominal pains. Brushing it off initially, I decided to get it checked, only to discover I was 4 months pregnant. The news was surprising, considering I hadn't shown any visible signs of pregnancy. Excited to share the news with Adrian upon his return home, little did I know the challenges that lay ahead. I prepared a lavish dinner and uncorked a fine bottle of wine. "Welcome home, sweetie," I exclaimed, catching my partner off guard. Curious, they questioned the extravagant setup. "What's with the fancy dinner? Why don't you sit down first?" I gestured for them to take a seat. "I have some news to share with you." "Okay, should I be worried?" I reassured them, "Absolutely not. In fact, I think you're going to be really happy." "All right, I'm excited." Spill. "So, you know how I've been experiencing those weird stomach pains?" I began. "Well, I went to the doctor today, and she ran some tests. Turns out my stomach is perfectly normal." Their curiosity piqued, they asked, "What was it then?" "Turns out I'm pregnant," I revealed. "Oh my gosh, are you serious?" they exclaimed, surprised. "The best part is that I'm 4 months along." They were incredulous, asking, "How is that even possible?" "It's a hidden pregnancy. I haven't had any other symptoms, and those pains were actually kicks," I explained. Overwhelmed, they responded, "Oh my God, this is big news. I'm so happy." "I am too. And this couldn't be happening at a better time. We're finally doing well financially, and I was going to ask you if we could start trying anyway," I shared. Concerned about announcing the news, they expressed, "Oh, we're going to have to tell everyone about that. I'm worried about the way your mother is going to react." Acknowledging the tension with my mother-in-law, I replied, "You know how much she hates me. She hates that everyone loves me. I'm worried that with the pregnancy announcement, I'm going to get more attention and she'll hate me even more." Determined to address the issue, my partner reassured me, "If you're okay with it, I'll have a strong word with her about her behavior. You don't have to worry about a thing. The only thing you have to do is enjoy being treated like a princess." Heartened by their support, I agreed. I would like that talk and the princess treatment. I say we wait until we find out the gender of the baby before we have a celebration, though. They embraced the idea, saying, "I love that idea. Now, let's have a little celebration of our own." Eugene and I were elated with the pregnancy news, and though we hadn't made concrete plans, we had set aside some savings for the eventual arrival of kids. A month later, we shared the joyous news with our families. While my family was overjoyed, Adrian's family, except for Becky, reacted positively. Surprisingly, she barely reacted, scowling at us. Deciding to have a gender reveal party, we organized a backyard barbecue and invited both our families. Using the traditional cake-cutting method, we discovered we were expecting a boy. I was elated and eager to start decorating our nursery after the gender reveal party. Throughout the entire celebration, I felt like a queen, receiving abundant attention and numerous questions. However, my joy took a turn when I noticed Becky's absence. After some inquiry, I discovered she was in the house, prompting me to seek her out. Inside our home, I found her at the top of the stairs. Puzzled, I asked, "Becky, what are you doing here?" "The party's downstairs." Her response shocked me. "Oh, I'm just trying to find proof." "Proof of what?" "Of your lies." Surprised, I retorted, "Excuse me, what lies?" "Come on now, ain't nobody believing that you got a baby in there. Are you trying to tell me that you think my pregnancy is fake?" "Of course. You're too tiny to be 7 months pregnant. There ain't no child in there," she declared dismissively. Defending myself, I explained, "Every woman experiences pregnancy differently. Just because I'm not as big as I'm supposed to be doesn't mean I'm not pregnant. Don't you dare lie. You just want everyone's attention." Why would I fake a whole pregnancy just to get attention? And why would I want attention in the first place? I know your kind. You're jealous that my son pays me all the attention when I come over, and you want to take that away. Feeling unfairly accused, I responded, "Becky, I think you're projecting some of your feelings onto me, and I really don't appreciate that." I have no need for attention because I naturally get it. You're trying to steal from me, and I do not appreciate that. Exasperated, I warned her. Look, you're stressing me out, and that is not good for the baby. I'm just going to go. Stop trying to steal the spotlight. No one gives a darn about you. The last thing I remember was her pushing me down the stairs, resulting in excruciating pain. When I woke up in a hospital bed with a tube in my hand and abdominal pain, I was disoriented. Eugene, sitting beside me, explained that I had fallen down the stairs and lost a lot of blood. They had to induce my pregnancy, and I had given birth. Desperate to know about my baby, Eugene hesitated, saying they were doing everything to stabilize our child, but he couldn't provide further details. Where is he? I need to see him. He's in the ICU, and I assure you he's in good hands. You have nothing to worry about. There's nothing more you can do. Don't blame yourself for anything. Once we get a donor for you, we can focus on our child, okay? Yeah, but I'm not blaming myself. Good. I have someone else to blame. What do you mean? I'll let you know, but could you please bring your mother down here? Why? Just please don't ask questions. I'm going through enough. Bring her here and tell her everything that happened in front of me. I'll explain everything else after. Okay, but first let's get you your blood, and then we'll do everything else that you wanted. Yeah, okay. Eugene went to talk to my doctor, and thankfully they had found a donor who was willing to donate immediately for me. The stress of everything made me fall right back asleep after the blood transfusion. I had so many emotions swirling through me, and I didn't know what to make of them. On one hand, I was grateful that my son was still alive, but I also knew that he might grow up with some developmental issues. I didn't have a problem with that, but the fact that Becky would be the reason that my son struggled made me feel hot with anger. I was asleep for a good 3 hours, and when I woke up, I felt much better. Once again, Eugene was next to me and immediately rushed to my side when I woke up. Hi, sweetie. You fell asleep for a little while. How do you feel right now? A lot better. How's our son? They've managed to stabilize him. He'll have to be in the NICU for the next 2 months. Will I be able to hold him? Not yet, but soon. I promise. Until then, we will definitely get to see him. I saw him, and he looks adorable. All right. I'm glad that everything's okay. But you wanted to see my mom, right? Oh yeah. Is she here? She's waiting outside. Shall I bring her in? Yeah. Hi, Pearl. How are you? Not doing so good, Mom. Eugene, did you update her on what happened? No, he didn't tell me anything. He just asked me to rush here. Eugene, could you tell her what happened since I got here? Well, Mom, after you came running to us about Pearl slipping down the stairs, she ended up bleeding a lot. She had to get induced so she could give birth to the baby. Thankfully, the doctors and nurses managed to stabilize our son. He's just going to be in the NICU for a while now. Oh, you gave birth, Pearl. Congratulations. Don't even. Do you have something to say to me and Eugene? What are you talking about? Sweetie, you said Becky came running to you after I slipped, right? Yes, and I'm so grateful that she saw it because none of us heard you fall. Great. Now, Becky, should I be the one to tell him, or will you do it yourself? What is she talking about, Mom? Oh, I don't know. She just gave birth. She's probably just making things up. She's probably suffering from mommy brain. Lord knows I had a bad case of it after I gave birth to you. Do not even try to make this into something as arbitrary as that, Eugene. Your mother pushed me down the stairs. What? You remember? I was overcome with emotion when I finally cradled my son, and Eugene shared in my tears. The realization that we had almost lost him left me feeling nauseous. Word spread that our son was back home, and somehow, even Becky got wind of it. She acquired another phone number just to reach out to us. Seeing that our responses were non-existent, she took it upon herself to show up unannounced at our house. Fortunately, Eugene answered the door. If I had, I might have given her a piece of my mind, or worse, physically confronted her for the stress she had caused my family. Becky looked worn and aged compared to our last encounter, tears in her eyes as she pleaded with Eugene to talk to her. "Please, talk to me, Mom. You need to stop trying to contact us." "How can I not? My son won't talk to me, and I don't get to see my grandson. You think you get to see our son? You don't think we're in pain from not being able to hold our little boy? I really am sorry. Please, at least talk to me. I thought I was doing something right." How is pushing my wife down a flight of stairs the right thing to do? She's always been trying to steal everyone's attention. I see the way she tries so hard, and it's just so darn hard to keep my anger in check. You have no idea how insane you sound right now. I do not. I was trying to do what was best for you. Best for me? How is this best for me? I always knew you could do so much better than Pearl. I was just trying to get you to see that by almost killing my child and wife. Are you kidding me right now? What you did was not done for me, but because you couldn't handle the fact that there was someone better than you in your family. Pearl is not better than me. Oh, she is in every way. She cooks better food and has a much better temperament than you. Why do you think more of our family has started coming over to our place for Thanksgiving when we host? Nobody can stand you and your entitlement. You take that back right this second. That is no way to speak to your mother. No, I will speak to you the way you deserve to be spoken to. You made our lives a nightmare from the start, and I have been silent about it only because Pearl begged me not to damage my relationship with you. Okay, I get it. I'm a horrible mother. You are. You absolutely are. You're lucky that we're not going to the police about you hurting Pearl and our son. Oh, please. Like if you have evidence of it, it'll be my word against hers. Who said we didn't have evidence? Don't try and bluff me right now. Look, Pearl and I are exhausted, and we want this time to be as calm as possible. So, for the foreseeable future, I do not want to hear from or see you again. Do you get it? You can't do that. I want to see my grandson too. Oh, you are never seeing your grandson. What? You have no idea how much our son is going to suffer thanks to your jealousy. The least I could do is make sure that he never meets the source of his problem. I will fight for my grandparents' rights. Go for it. Bye. Eugene was furious that Becky still had the audacity to even show up. If it were me in her place, I would never have shown my face to my family. But hey, everyone's different, I guess. Becky did not give up on trying to contact us. Not only would she call and text us a whole bunch of times, but she would also show up at our doorstep and make a huge ruckus until we opened the door. So Eugene and I did the only sensible thing and got a restraining order against Becky. She once again did not like that, but I was so tired by this point that I really did not care. Thankfully, Eugene and I dealt with Becky just in time for us to take our son home. Let me tell you, holding him for the first time made me sob and feel so grateful that he was still alive. Eugene and I decided to use the next few months to just bond with our child, so we didn't let anyone come over to see the baby. Thankfully, after everything that happened, everyone was happy to comply. Becky, however, did not stop trying to bother us. One day, we actually received a summons to come to court because Becky was trying to fight for her grandparents' rights. That threw me into a blind rage. I couldn't believe that she was actually trying to claim grandparent rights when she almost killed me and the grandson she so desperately wanted to see. I asked Eugene to gather the evidence and made our way to a lawyer's firm. We hired a good lawyer, showed him the evidence, and he told us that we could charge Becky, even though we didn't want to do it earlier. After dealing with her harassment for months, we decided to press charges against her. The trial that followed was truly something out of a movie. Becky cried and sobbed at first because we were neglecting her and not letting her visit her only grandson. I could tell that the jury was a little sympathetic towards her, but I knew I had the most incriminating piece of evidence for her. When the footage of her pushing me down the stairs played, everyone in the room went silent, and Becky grew pale. After the first hearing, Becky blasted us with calls and texts, accusing us of hiding the truth from her. We figured it was in the best interest that we blocked her. After a couple of weeks, Becky was charged with attempted murder of an unborn child and was sentenced to 6 months in jail. All her appeals were denied, and Eugene and I couldn't have been happier. Of course, word got around in Eugene's family as well about what Becky had done, and let's just say that nobody wants anything to do with her anymore. She's going to have a tough time when she's done with her sentence. As for Eugene and me, we're gradually getting used to being first-time parents, and we're loving every second of it. I'm just glad we get to do it stress-free. We were considering moving, but that's a decision to make for a later time. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Karen, age 27, and my husband Stephen is also 27. We tied the knot just last year, both juggling full-time jobs. I work as a nurse, and Stephen is in pharmaceutical sales. Our paths had crossed before, but it was at a coworker's happy hour event that we truly connected. Being a fan of good drinks, the after-work cocktails that evening were especially delightful. Though we had encountered each other previously, that night marked the first time we engaged in meaningful conversation. Our drink preferences aligned, and we hit it off effortlessly. Each encounter thereafter was enjoyable and easy, quickly leading us into a dating relationship. On my birthday, Stephen opened up about his feelings, and we officially became a couple. Our favorite dates revolve around discovering hidden gems that offer excellent drinks. I'm partial to wine, while Stephen leans towards steak. Our differing tastes add a fun dynamic, allowing us to share and learn new things from one another. As our relationship progressed, thoughts of marriage started to occupy my mind. It was during this time that I delved into Stephen's background. His parents had divorced when he was young, and he never knew his father, being raised by his single mom with whom he shares a close bond. Stephen has never moved out of his family home. Initially, I questioned whether this was a flaw or a testament to his strong family values. Love often clouds judgment, and at that point, I viewed it as a positive trait. Stephen is not only kind but incredibly handsome, and I struggled to find any flaws. Feeling fortunate to be married to the seemingly perfect man, I was unaware of the daunting married life that awaited me. Before our wedding, I frequently shared meals with my mother-in-law, who always spoke highly of me to Stephen, saying, "Karen is like a daughter to me. Don't let her get away, marry her soon." Hearing those words always brought me joy, and I eagerly anticipated officially becoming part of the family. Steve, who had a knack for connecting with people, also had an excellent reputation with my parents. The wedding went off without a hitch, reflecting our shared preference for avoiding the limelight. Post-wedding, Stephen made the significant move out of his family home for the first time. However, out of concern for his mom, we opted for an apartment just a 10-minute walk from his family residence. In hindsight, that choice proved to be a mistake, but regrets come too late. The dynamic with my mother-in-law shifted drastically after the wedding. Once treating me like a daughter, she transformed into someone who seemed to view me as a mortal enemy, visiting our home daily. With care, I approached Stephen, expressing, "I appreciate your mom's visits, but it's challenging for me to relax. Could you ask her to come less frequently on workdays?" Stephen's response was unexpected as he asserted, "Why? We're family now. Mom gets lonely, she loves to talk, and she hates being alone. I wish she would be more understanding. This is my home too, and I can't convey something I don't believe. If you have something to say it yourself. I won't." It was a surprising turn, and Stephen's refusal to consider my perspective left me taken aback. From that day forward, any mention of his mother made Stephen moody, prompting me to withhold my thoughts to avoid further arguments. My mother-in-law took advantage of the situation, and before I realized it, Stephen had given her a spare key. One day, I returned home to find my mother-in-law cooking in our kitchen without permission. Surprised to discover her in my personal space, my tone turned assertive. "What are you doing, mother-in-law? You can't just come in here without asking," she retorted. "What's going on with your fridge? It's practically empty. I have never seen such a lifeless fridge. Do you even cook? Don't tell me you're always buying deli items." Unable to hold back any longer, I responded, I shop for fresh ingredients daily. I've heard your fridge is always packed like a traffic jam. It's impressive you can manage that. I just bought ingredients today. Sure, we have deli days, but I also cook to save money. And by the way, deli food these days is pretty good. Haven't you ever tried it? Mother-in-law wasn't backing down. I'll listen to you. I would rather not have Stephen eat food when we don't even know who made it. This is what happens when he marries an incompetent wife. I should have taught him to be more discerning about women. Sparks ignited between us, and once I began expressing my grievances, words poured out uncontrollably. Do you see the shopping bag, mother-in-law? Not a single deli item in it. I'm busy, so could you please not get in my way? You're not even a guest anymore. You let yourself in. Mother-in-law stormed out, her face flushed with anger. I'll tell Stephen about this. I had more to say, but she left. Despite feeling uncomfortable, I knew I was justified. Shaking off the negative vibes, I focused on cooking pot roast. When Stephen returned home, his face mirrored his mother's anger. What'd you say to Mom? She called me crying. How could you be so cruel when she was just trying to help because you're busy? Baffled, I responded, first off, breaking into someone's home isn't a surprise. And if it is, then a burglar should be forgiven if they call it a surprise, right? This happened because you gave her a spare key. She could have come when one of us was home. It's not only unnecessary, but also intrusive. What about my privacy? I have no intention of apologizing. Stephen looked shocked and with a single word said, please. Can you two just get along? He retreated to his room without eating dinner. Hoping this dispute would make him more considerate, I endured days of minimal communication. Unable to bear the tension, I initiated a conversation saying, what do you want to do going forward? I don't want a relationship where we don't communicate. Let's talk. Finally, Stephen spoke up, saying, Mom's remorseful. She was crying yesterday, worried you would never forgive her. The root cause was me giving her the spare key. I'm sorry, Karen. I didn't care about mother-in-law as long as Stephen understood. That was enough. My weakness showed, and I forgave him. Even though I knew in the back of my mind, my fault is that I forgive. Stephen promptly called his mother, who eagerly came running, visibly relieved to be summoned. Exhausted from the ongoing conflict, I harbored a bad feeling but was willing to give peace a chance. As soon as mother-in-law saw my face, it was as if a switch had been turned on. Oh, I'm so relieved. I thought Karen would never speak to me again. I know I overstepped, and I promised never to do it again. Mother-in-law began speaking in a voice as sweet as if she were addressing a cat. Despite my reservations, she pulled out a mysterious bag from her purse. I met an old friend from college yesterday. She's unbelievably youthful and beautiful. She gave me some Chinese tea. That's her beauty secret. I thought I'd share some with you, not that you need it. My instincts raised concern, but I felt awkward refusing. Stephen whispered, just have 1 cup of tea with her. I'll make sure she leaves as soon as possible. Wanting her gone, I reluctantly agreed to the tea. I'd always enjoyed Chinese tea, and it's popular at my workplace too. Mother-in-law quickly poured hot water into the tea pack. This tea is supposed to be good for your skin and boost female hormones. You guys are thinking about having kids soon, right? If you like it, I'll tell my friend to get some for you, she said, placing the cup in front of me. The aroma was a bit unusual, but I took a sip anyway. It tasted strange, but I dismissed it, thinking it was just a new flavor. However, my bad feeling came true. I woke up in the middle of the night with stomach pain, feeling half faint. By the time I felt better, it was already morning. There was no doubt about it. The only thing I had consumed that Stephen hadn't was the suspicious Chinese tea. I told Stephen about it, but he didn't take me seriously. Karen, that's a terrible accusation. Mom brought the tea to make amends. You're making it sound like she poisoned you. Don't you feel ashamed? It's probably just an upset stomach. Mom would never do something like that. Stephen wouldn't believe that I was being malicious, but without evidence, I couldn't press the issue. Still, I have been wary of anything from mother-in-law since then. Just before Stephen's birthday, mother-in-law called. "Karen, I'm cooking for Stephen's birthday. Say you can come or not, it's up to you. You're busy, right? Maybe you should take some time to refresh yourself." She was planning to celebrate Stephen's birthday without me. I hadn't dared to eat anything from her since that day, and homemade food was out of the question. But I was planning to spend Stephen's birthday together, so I felt upset. I thought we would spend his birthday together since we are newlyweds. I assume you have celebrated with him every year until now, so from now on it's my turn. Before I could complete my sentence, she abruptly interrupted me. Regardless, I insist on Stephen returning home. "Karen, your presence is optional. We can defer the celebration of your birthday to next month, all right?" I left the decision in Steph's hands. That nickname of hers, Steph responded, "Did you catch that? You have the freedom to do whatever you please on that day." Without hesitation, he favored his mother-in-law over me, and my patience was wearing thin. On Stephen's birthday, his enthusiasm was contagious, but it left me feeling queasy. My affection for him began to dwindle. He relished celebrating exclusively with his mom, transforming into more of a mama's boy. Their dining outings became more frequent. I'm occupied with work and can't dwell on this all the time. A month flew by, and it was my birthday. Traditionally, we celebrated at our favorite restaurant. I assumed this year would follow suit, but Stephen surprised me. "Mom wants to join in the celebration. She'd be happiest if the two of you could get along." I was taken aback, frozen in shock. Stephen, still exuberant, remained oblivious. I expressed, "I wanted to celebrate with just you, Stephen. We spent your birthday together, so let's do the same for mine." Stephen, for some inexplicable reason, interpreted it as politeness. No need to hold back. Mom offered, so it's fine. He just couldn't grasp it. With no other option, I had to be resolute. "No offense to mother-in-law, but I want to spend my birthday exclusively with you. I'd like to go to our special restaurant." Suddenly, Stephen erupted in anger. "Don't reject Mom's kindness. You're heartless. Haven't you realized she didn't invite you to my birthday? Just comply with my wishes. It's already a hassle." I was done arguing. And then came my birthday. Instead of the anticipated restaurant outing, we were at home, with mother-in-law in tow. Neither of them seemed attuned to my subdued mood. My frustration escalated as I observed them enjoying themselves in the kitchen. Then the lights dimmed, and the cake made its entrance. Despite my anger, the cake provided a brief respite before I blew out the candles. Mother-in-law excitedly announced a special gift for my birthday celebration. I splurged on a $5,000 bottle of wine. "Let's uncork it right away." The packaging appeared worn, and the cork crumbled at the touch. "Is this what they call vintage?" She pondered aloud, pouring a generous amount into my glass. Even in the subdued lighting, it was evident that the wine had an unsettling cloudiness. Recollections of the Chinese tea mishap flooded my mind as I cautiously took a small sip. "What is this?" I immediately spat it out, prompting me to turn on the lights. In the kitchen sink, I inverted the bottle of mother-in-law's supposedly extravagant $5,000 wine, watching as it flowed down the drain. Stephen swiftly seized the bottle from my hands, scolding me, "You're being awful." Apologized to Mom. "What do you think you're doing?" The anger etched on Stephen's face was unmistakable. Under Stephen's intense gaze, I poured some wine into the glass he was holding. "Can you drink this then?" Stephen appeared puzzled yet resolute as he took a sip. At that precise moment, mother-in-law urgently shouted, "Stephen, don't drink it." Unfortunately, it was too late. He immediately spat it out, exclaiming, "What on earth is this?" Mother-in-law, shocked, took the wine away from Stephen. He questioned Mom, "Where did you get this wine? We need to file a complaint. This is fraud. It's spoiled." Mother-in-law, looking guilty, admitted, "That wine was just sitting in the back of our kitchen. It's 50 years old. I heard on TV that it gains $1,000 in value every year. Vintage wines are supposed to be stored in wine coolers. Upon closer examination, the cork was more deteriorated than initially thought, emitting a moldy odor. Even Stephen couldn't conceal his surprise. What bothered me was mother-in-law's insistence. "Don't drink it." I suspect she knew it was spoiled, but she would never admit it. I couldn't find it in me to forgive mother-in-law for her actions. "Could you please leave? I can't control my emotions. Just go," I implored. Yet even as I spoke, mother-in-law continued to offer excuses to Stephen. I felt invisible, but even she, visibly uncomfortable, hurriedly departed. Once she was gone, Stephen surprised me with his response. "Mom doesn't drink, so she wouldn't have known." Thankfully, we didn't offer it to anyone else. Despite everything, Stephen defended mother-in-law as if it were an innocent mistake. In that moment, my feelings for him cooled. My determination against Stephen solidified as he defended mother-in-law despite her actions against me. I had ignored his excessive attachment to his mother for too long. "I want a divorce," I declared, presenting Stephen with divorce papers I had kept just in case. He was rendered speechless, questioning my decision. "Ask yourself, do you comprehend how much I've endured? I've reached my breaking point." Then, to compound matters, he offered a profound apology without prompting, stating, "I won't repeat it. You've won." He proceeded to confess to multiple affairs, revealing 4 different women. Though I had harbored suspicions of infidelity, learning the truth left me shocked. There was no longer any doubt. I was determined to divorce him. Engaging a private investigator seemed unnecessary. Evidence of his affairs was abundant. During our conversation, he foolishly remarked, "You'll regret divorcing someone as great as me." Stephen's words only fueled my disgust at myself for ever loving him. Multiple affairs and his attachment to his mother provided ample grounds for divorce. To streamline the process, I resolved to hire a lawyer, regardless of the cost. Initially resistant to the divorce, Stephen eventually relented, likely recognizing the gravity of his mistakes. He returned to his doting mother, and later it surfaced that his affair was with a co-worker, leading to his demotion. Unable to distance himself from his mother, Stephen ultimately resigned from his job. Despite his ongoing job hunt, word of his workplace indiscretions had spread rapidly, hindering his prospects in the same field. Persistently tethered to his mother, he settled for part-time work. Given his arrogant and unreliable demeanor, it seems unlikely that he will maintain the job for an extended period. While I rely on his steady employment to receive alimony, the payments are currently consistent, so I'll count that as a win. I discovered that mother-in-law, who had presented herself as superior, was in fact a hoarder. Stephen's family home turned out to be a literal dump, explaining their reluctance to have me over. As the stench became a bother to neighbors, police intervention became necessary. The mere thought of consuming wine from that house still turns my stomach. Let Stephen live in his squalid environment and work his sporadic part-time jobs with his beloved mother-in-law for all I care. Though I've returned to my previous life, I find happiness in the absence of torment. No longer will Stephen disrupt my workplace, providing a welcome relief. In hindsight, Stephen possessed good looks but little else. The fact that he complies with alimony payments is a silver lining, I suppose. The breakup taught me a valuable lesson. Love is, indeed, blind. This time, I'm putting romance on hold to focus on my career. I've learned my lesson and am determined to prioritize my professional pursuits. I've had enough of pinching pennies. I'm exhausted by it. When we first tied the knot, my husband praised me as a prudent and thrifty wife. But in just 3 short years, he's changed so much. Your complexion looks patchy, doesn't it? You don't take good care of your skin, do you? Are you even still a woman? Those were his parting words before he stormed out. Yet he never anticipated the regret that would follow his rash departure. Nor did he bother to ask the most important question. My name is Madison, and at 31, I hold down a full-time job. It's been a year since I divorced my husband, who is 3 years my senior, after he left me for another woman. We were married for just 3 years, Even before our marriage, I harbored ambitious dreams, and together, my husband and I worked diligently towards them, leading a modest life, never squandering a cent. You're remarkable for your age, so disciplined and frugal, my husband used to marvel. Observing the steadfastness with which I managed my affairs, he was quick to envision a future together. Within a year of courtship, he proposed, and we became husband and wife. Yet, I kept my most cherished dream concealed, deeming it too far-fetched to share. I feared his ridicule if I were to divulge it. Instead, I engaged him in our frugality game, meticulously managing our finances without disclosing the ultimate purpose. As time passed and our marriage matured, my husband underwent a subtle transformation. You still meticulously track every penny. You spend so much time with those account books. He jest, poking fun at my thriftiness. It's almost refreshing to find an error. He'd add with a smirk, while I found solace in the precision of my records, treating it like a personal challenge. Unfazed, my husband would retreat to his phone, leaving me to my calculations. When our daughter arrived, I took on a part-time job as a newspaper delivery person to supplement our income. My early morning departures irritated my husband, but our daughter slept soundly, as if she sensed the importance of my endeavor, my dream. Through rigorous economizing and additional work, I steadily grew our savings until they reached a point where my husband couldn't scoff when I finally revealed my dream to him. "Listen, honey, there's something I need to talk to you about," I began, ready to finally share my long-held dream with my husband. But before I could say another word, he cut me off with a strange irritation in his voice. "Shut up! Are you going to lecture me about saving money again? Every day, it's save this, save that. It's getting old," he snapped. It wasn't news to me that he had grown increasingly annoyed with my frugality over the years. Sensing his frustration, I had refrained from mentioning anything about saving money for quite some time. But it seemed even the mere presence of my efforts to eliminate waste had become suffocating for him. "You act like you've achieved something when you've done nothing. What's with that smug look?" he continued, his words cutting deep. As he criticized me, I couldn't help but think how all the qualities he once admired about me had now become faults in his eyes. Every interaction with him seemed like an unwarranted attack, blaming me for things beyond my control. It was as if his perception of me had shifted drastically, while I remained unchanged. He no longer found joy in our shared endeavor of saving money. Instead, he sought distractions to vent his frustrations. It dawned on me then that perhaps he had never truly shared my values of thriftiness and stability. Maybe he was merely intrigued by the novelty of it all when we first met. I recall the drunken confession he made once, admitting to squandering his mother's savings without her consent, despite previously claiming she had passed away. It became evident that he had always been a reckless spender, lacking in financial discipline. In realizing this, I understood that our differences in money management ran deeper than I had initially thought. It wasn't just a matter of differing viewpoints, it was a fundamental misalignment of values. After listening to my story, I foresaw my husband's growing reluctance towards our frugal lifestyle. As expected, he began to express irritation with saving money and gradually revealed his true character. Night after night, he returned home inebriated, neglecting to provide us with enough money for essentials. One evening, as he stumbled in during the wee hours, I mustered the courage to confront him. "Can you at least leave some money for our daughter's milk? You're her father, aren't you?" I pleaded. His response was dismissive, claiming his earnings as his own to spend as he pleased. Eventually, he ceased contributing to our household altogether. I couldn't ignore the flickering shadow of another woman in his life, nor his increasing belligerence towards me. It reached a point where he either absented himself for days on end or moved in with his mistress. Realizing the futility of salvaging our marriage, I made the decision to leave. I refused to remain tethered to a man who shirked his responsibilities, indulged in vices, and failed to provide for us. With both my parents gone and a baby to care for, I turned to my maternal aunt for support. Despite my reluctance to burden her, I confided in her about my predicament and asked to stay with her for a while. Understanding my plight, she welcomed me into her home, having gone through a divorce herself. I gathered my courage, filed for divorce, and moved out of the apartment I once shared with my husband. It was a rare occasion when someone visited our home during those turbulent times. Later, as the divorce proceedings unfolded, my husband contacted me, claiming he had signed the papers. We met at a cafe where he presented me with a bulging envelope from his jacket pocket, cautioning against any future disputes. Inside the envelope lay a substantial sum of money, accompanied by his declaration of intent to marry into a wealthy family. Seeing through his pitiful attempt to buy his way out of our marriage, I couldn't help but retort with biting sarcasm. If you marry into wealth, you won't need to worry about saving anymore. As those words left my lips, I couldn't shake the thought that a woman who would entertain a man like my husband couldn't possibly be as wealthy as he claimed. At best, she might be running a small business. Yet, my husband departed without a hint of love or concern for our daughter. In turn, I saw no reason to disclose to him the identity of the visitor who had graced our doorstep the day I left with our daughter. Leaving my daughter in the care of my aunt, I returned to work. One day, much to my surprise, my aunt remarked, "Since you've been here, the utility bills have decreased." I couldn't help but chuckle at her observation. I have a knack for saving money, I confessed proudly. Eager to repay my aunt's kindness, I got creative. My thrifty nature and keen eye for waste allowed me to identify areas where we could cut costs. When I shared my strategies with her, she was amazed. "I must tell my friends about this. They'll be thrilled," she exclaimed. Grateful for her support, I gathered her friends and shared my money-saving techniques with them. Their enthusiasm surpassed my expectations, and soon they were eager to spread the word to others. What started as a simple gesture of gratitude blossomed into regular lectures on financial efficiency. My aunt, impressed by my unexpected talent, proposed charging for my services. Through these lectures, I swiftly rebuilt the savings I had lost in the divorce and finally achieved my long-held dream. About a year after the divorce, while visiting a hall for one of my lectures, I noticed a man in work attire carrying materials. As I observed him casually, something about him caught my attention. As I locked eyes with the figure, I realized it was my former husband. His gaze met mine, and recognition dawned on his face. In a split second, I felt a sinking sensation in my stomach, but it was too late. A smug grin spread across his face from a distance. Desiring no conversation, I feigned ignorance and made a swift exit through the hall's exit. However, he pursued me and intercepted my path. "You don't have to run away. We're divorced," he declared with a half smile, as if proud of some achievement I hadn't even heard of. "I've been put in charge of a company owned by my wife's father. I'm here to oversee some work with my team. I'm slated to become the company president, so I'm quite busy," he boasted, peering at me expectantly. Then, with a mocking tone, he asked about my situation. "I heard you're on welfare. Despite your penny pinching, if you can't earn, you're still going to struggle, right?" His sarcastic grin was unmistakable as he awaited my response. I furrowed my brow in disbelief. "Who are you confusing me with?" I retorted sharply. He maintained his half smile, unfazed, and continued his barrage of accusations. "Didn't you go begging to the landlord of our old apartment for a loan?" His laughter punctuated his words. Then his demeanor shifted briefly to seriousness. "I went to collect some belongings left behind when I moved out. The landlord mentioned something about you struggling and suggested welfare. Was that not you?" His doubtful gaze scrutinized me, but I stood before him impeccably dressed, my appearance hardly resembling that of someone on welfare. I explained I had forgotten until now. "Your mother visited shortly before our divorce, seeking financial help. Out of sympathy, I obliged. She was the visitor who came when I was leaving, not a representative of my financial state." My revelation seemed to genuinely surprise him. "You're joking, right? Mom is alive, seriously. If she knew my current situation, she might demand her money back." He revealed the turmoil his mother had faced upon discovering he had squandered her diligently saved savings. As I locked eyes with my former husband in the hall, I realized with a sinking feeling that he had spotted me too. Before I could slip away, his grin widened, and he hurried over to intercept me. "No need to run off. We're divorced," he remarked with a half-smile, flaunting something I hadn't heard. "I've been put in charge of a company owned by my wife's father. I'm going to be the president, so I've got a lot on my plate," he continued, his gaze lingering on me. Then, with a mocking tone, he inquired about my situation. "I heard you're on welfare. Despite all your savings, you're still struggling, aren't you?" I furrowed my brow in response. "Who are you confusing me with?" I retorted. Unfazed, he persisted, claiming I had sought a loan from our former landlord. Amused by his accusations, I chuckled. "I was there to collect my belongings after moving out," he added, his tone shifting momentarily. "The landlord mentioned welfare. Wasn't that you?" he questioned, casting a doubtful glance my way. Dressed impeccably in recognizable brands, with my hair and nails meticulously groomed, I hardly resembled a welfare recipient. I explained, "Your mother visited our old apartment before we divorced. She needed money, and I couldn't turn her away." His incredulous expression betrayed genuine surprise. "Mom's alive. No joke. It's she knew of how I lived now. She might want that money back," he remarked, his tone tinged with regret. His mother, who had been abandoned by her son after he squandered her savings, recounted her struggles tearfully. Despite her son's remorse, he never repaid her. Upon visiting me, she revealed her desire to reconcile, having tracked down our address through a relative. Sensing my husband's unease, I informed him that I had given her his company name, although I had left the job 3 months prior to oversee my in-laws' business. My husband appeared relieved until I disclosed that I had passed on the envelope containing the money from our divorce settlement, now belonging to his wife's family company, as a gesture of goodwill. His shock was palpable as he struggled to comprehend the depth of his mother's plight. As I recounted her situation, he grew increasingly agitated, finally breaking into a cold sweat. As I suggested informing his mother of his current employment, his phone rang, likely his current wife calling. Startled, he fumbled for his phone, his expression a mix of panic and disbelief. Suppressing a laugh, I responded, "Is she asking me to take care of her?" With a casual wave goodbye to my husband, engrossed in his phone call, I strode towards the neighboring apartment building. My husband, noticing my departure, interrupted his conversation, beckoning me to wait. "Where do you think you're going? That's an expensive building. You'll get in trouble if you go in without permission," he cautioned. Turning to face him, I revealed, "I'm the owner of this building. I've rented out all the other units, but my daughter and I reside on the top floor." His stunned silence spoke volumes. I explained that my dedication to thriftiness stemmed from a desire to purchase such a property. "I had just saved enough money to do so when you began to resist frugality," I admitted, causing him to drop his phone in shock. But I had another revelation for him. I inherited a substantial sum from my parents. Instead of squandering it, I invested in real estate, turning my savings into assets worth $5 million, I revealed, gazing up at the building proudly. My husband marveled at my success, expressing regret for not providing such a lifestyle for me himself. "Well, she can make her unlucky son pay for all the hard work he's done with millions in debt and interest," he remarked bitterly. Amidst my laughter, I offered to teach his mother money-saving techniques and share tips for growing his fledgling company. Ignoring his attempts to engage further, I entered the apartment building, leaving him stunned in the hallway. He hurried after me, but I paid him no mind, knowing he couldn't follow me inside. Once inside my home on the top floor, I promptly contacted a trusted real estate agent, grateful for the opportunities my prudent investments had afforded me. "Actually, I have an apartment I'd like to sell next. I'm considering buying a house with an ocean view. Would you be willing to discuss this with me again?" I proposed, eager to move on from the apartment now that my husband was aware of it. Though I doubted he could do anything about it, I wanted to relinquish it just in case. My aunt, having overheard my conversation, brewed a pot of tea and brought it over. I also invited the woman who had been caring for my daughter, and the three of us sat together, discussing our plans for the future amidst laughter and camaraderie. As for my husband, I never encountered him again in the hallway next to the apartment where we crossed paths. Instead, I noticed a different man overseeing the proceedings, an older gentleman. Perhaps my husband faced consequences for his actions towards his mother, or perhaps he simply moved on. Either way, it was no longer my concern. I resolved to focus on my work and continue raising my daughter in the company of trustworthy individuals who truly cared for us. With a sense of liberation and optimism for the future, I embraced